We don't sugarcoat a thing. We don't chase that easy conversation. Real keepers in the chat. Habitat vivarium palladium. From the rack to the biotank. From the desert to the jungle. Cold-blooded conversation. Real talk, we walk that walk. No hype, no bait, just learn, relate. Cold blood. Real talk, same crew, one community. If you're here for the truth, then you're one of us. What's your venom? What's your poison? Let us hear about that clutch. Talk mistakes, not just wins. Share the losses, learn again. Desert sand, jungle vine. Every story on the line. From the kid with just one gecko to the gal with all the teeth. Cold-blooded conversation. Real talk, we walk that walk. No hype, no bait, just learn, relate. Cold blood. Real talk, same crew, one community. If you're here for the truth, then you're one of us. Cold-blooded conversation. Real talk, we walk that walk. No hype, no bait, just learn, relate. Cold blood. Real talk, same crew, one community. If you're here for the truth, then you're one of us.
Just throw him straight under the bus there. Good
All I
evening.
need is 20 seconds. Ask my missus.
Yeah, no, let's not
And
get
we
into
are
that.
live. Brilliant.
We are live. Good evening,
I
all.
just
Good
gotta
evening,
put my
all.
headphones out because then I can start doing Mac's job for him.
What? You're not doing my job. This is a joint venture. There's no single jobs. This is teamwork, baby.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. We are live. God knows how that's
Oh.
happened again.
So I was still waiting
See how
for
it
it to
goes
come
on.
up. So obviously,
Yeah, no,
I've got the YouTube stream up at the side, but that must be behind. So
The YouTube, yeah,
looks
the
like
stream
live.
Yeah.
is a little bit back and forth. So it is. It
So
is a
I'm
bit of
gonna
a
do
pain
the-
in the arse.
Welcome, Dan. Welcome to the podcast. I've been asked to do the intro-y bit whilst Mac does his technical bit. So I'm just going to put out there, we have sponsors. All the legal info is in the description, but we'd like to thank Faunalux, the Reptile Keeper, and Chaz just because. And also say that we are supporters of RRK, Reptar, and RSUK. And I think that's everything I need to say. But I'm sure I'll get corrected if I've forgotten anything by
No,
at least Donna.
No, it sounds good to me. It's don't blame Mac. I've literally not even started. I'm sending out notifications to say we're live. Start blaming Mac at this time of night. For goodness sake, it's a bit early.
To be fair, it's a bit late for her. She's normally started with that before anything else.
She has. A little bit of housekeeping. We've got Wilson Exotics in the chart. We have got Dan Clan of Critters, who's also watching on, because Dan is a streamer, so he's well versed with multiple screens, etc. We've got Village of Reptile Wonders, good evening. Blue Reptiles UK, Amadeus Resnick, good evening. I've nailed that now. We are all here and going. Dan, thank you for joining us. It's been a long time coming, this one. I think you were one of our very earliest supporters for the channel.
It's been I think it's been in diary for a couple of months now.
Yeah, Andy's
Yeah, we like to book ahead.
And Andy likes to book ahead. I'm not as organised as Andy, but yeah, he's well organised. But I think you have pretty much been here from the start, following and supporting us in the background and stuff. So thank you very much for that. You know, we really appreciate that.
No,
so your content, Dan, everything is creepy crawly. Am I right?
yeah, I'd say so. Mostly. I mean, I think the cat and the dog have been in a couple of the videos, but mostly in the background. But yeah, it's kind of the less loved stuff.
The less loved stuff, fantastic. And is it all the less loved stuff, or have we got some reptiles hidden in the gems as well?
So there is a couple of reptiles, not too many. I've got a wee group of morning geckos, which actually I've just had some eggs hatch. I've got a couple more in a wee tub up behind me I'm waiting for. And 3 snakes. Apart from that though, well actually not, I've also got some axolotls and some floating frogs. But apart from that, it's all invertebrates.
Nice.
So you just got a mash of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But your channel is...
Sorry?
I was going to say your channel's predominantly the creepy and the crawly.
Yeah, that was kind of what it started for. It was inverts. Inverts are really where a lot of my, maybe not so much expertise, but where my speciality lies.
Good evening, Mike. Welcome along. Super happy to see you on, Dan. Yeah, so there is what I like about the herp hobby, if you would, on a whole, covering invertebrates, amphibians, and reptiles, and all the things in between. That genuinely across the board, people tend to know people from different communities, and it's really good. It's been one of our primary focuses on bridging those gaps between different communities, and I think we're doing a really good job of that. We were just talking about Donna back screen, actually, Wilson Exotics, and Donna's everywhere. She's really nice, and she gets on with a lot of people and stuff. So there's my stalker. Mike's the stalker. Benji, good evening. Oi, oi, Savalois. So, Dan, you do invert content, YouTube, Instagram, and you do a lot of weekly lives, don't you? You jump in other people's channels as well and have conversations and stuff.
Mostly in chat. I've not been on the screen for the lives in quite a while.
So just in chat.
But that's it's just because I've been so busy at work. I've got like at least 2 jobs, maybe more, depending on how you look at some of the other stuff I do. But it makes it hard to get back in time to actually get on for lives and stuff. And also setting up the camera takes quite a lot of time. So
it does. So again, something else we just touched on lightly back of screen, didn't we? That you do have a day job, you have a summer job, you have your own collection and your own kids. So there's a fair bit on the go, isn't there?
A few more kids than normal. I've not got any biological kids of my own. So I am a teacher outside of all of this stuff. I used to teach biology. I now teach outreach. So I work with what we say is our hardest to reach young people. We've got just over 100 people on our own roll, and each of those kids have quite specific needs that we need to cover, and that can go from behavioural to emotional. And we work with a lot of kids with anxiety, but really my main role is I work with kids that have certain behavioural needs, specialist behavioural needs. So I work with a lot of kids that have, say, they've maybe got criminal charges that relate to violence and knife crime, and just kind of antisocial behaviour.
Yeah, it's really important work.
That's a challenging job in itself.
It definitely is, yeah.
But I bet it's rewarding as well.
It is because, as well, sometimes when you're working in the main school, there's a lot of kids that when you're a teacher, it can be quite disheartening, because there's a lot of kids that definitely they kind of take you for granted. They don't realise some of the work you put in at times. There's also some parents that think that. There's definitely a culture out there at the moment where people are against teachers. And that's not to say that all teachers is good, because you've got to be careful what you say, because I can't bring what we say is I can't bring the profession into disrepute. But we all know teachers who maybe aren't quite suited to the job they're in, or maybe aren't the most loved across the school community. But there's a lot of teachers that do a lot of work, and sometimes the kids in school, I say, they take you for granted. You're there all the time. It's what you're supposed to be. Whereas these kids, a lot of these kids have never had an adult actually invest time in them or look like they care about them. So when that you do finally get through that barrier and gets returned, it's amazing. So it's a completely different feeling to teach in a classroom of 20 kids at a time.
No, that makes sense. Do you find the stuff you do, like with the creepy crawlies, translates across to that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I was really successful in my first year at the school I'm at. In terms of who I was getting in my classroom, I was giving quite tricky classes because I was very transparent at the start that I like to work with kind of kids for these challenging backgrounds. So I got a lot of kids that had quite low attendance, and my biology attendance was like the highest in the school. So I had kids that were literally only coming in for my biology lessons and then leaving for the day. And I think part of that was because I had a classroom full of animals. So from the start, I had a giant millipede, which the kids named Bagel. We had a giant African land snail called Slim Snaily. We had a few mantises across the year, which was actually a really cool one. Mantises don't live that long, so it lets you broach the idea these animals growing and going through different life stages, and it gets you to broach the topic of mortality with kids, which is quite tricky to do in schools at sometimes. But some of the mantises did pass while the kids were caring about them, so that brought in some really cool conversations. We also had a group of floating frogs, Asian floating frogs, which are now in my living room, and two axolotls called Axel and Otto. We also had some spiny stick insects, and then there was a few other things dotted out throughout the time. But that was a really major part of my teaching, was having these what we call life collections in the classroom.
We've spoke to quite a few people who aren't necessarily involved with schools, and we all sort of have the same experience when we then take animals to school, whether it's just as a parent, it's taking it into to have stuff, and it's really rewarding when you see the children interact. It's a different feeling, isn't it? When you see that you are getting through to them, it's massively different.
Your mic's going in and out, Mac.
You also get to see the curiosity in them again as well, which is quite nice. For some reason, there's this thing about when kids go to high school, they tend to almost punish curiosity. So teachers want to hear answers to the questions that they ask. They don't want to hear questions back. Whereas when you've got these animals in and you try to teach people about them, they start asking things that you've never really thought of. Like, for example, a kid asked me just a very simple question when I had the two axolotls in. They asked if they like each other. So then that got into this whole conversation about, can amphibians really feel any emotions like that? It's very likely they can, but then what are some of the mechanics that lead to that? And it brings you conversations for outside of the curriculum. So you get to actually look at some cool science that really, the way the curriculum's set up, you're not really encouraged to go into. So having these animals in classrooms and out to see kids, it really is amazing.
Yeah, it's different. It's great. It really is. So that's your normal day job. What's your summer day job?
So I also work for Edinburgh Zoo. I don't do it just in the summer. I kind of do it throughout the year. So I work for the RZSS, which is the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland. I'm a Discovery and Learning Associate, and I work within the education team. So one of the things I do is throughout the year, I run CAT, which I'm actually wearing the t-shirt for the now, which is one of our conservation action teams. I work with the youngest group in that. So in my day job, I teach high schoolers. When I'm at the zoo, I teach primary 2 and 3. So I'm working with really, really small kids. And what we're doing is we're delivering outdoor education. So we work in the wild we've got a little garden in the zoo, which is amazing. So we work out in there, encouraging the kids to actually get their hands dirty and get involved in some of the things you can do in nature. But we also teach about conservation. So we teach about conservation that's across the world. So not just projects we're involved in, projects that are just happening and that other charities and organisations and communities are delivering. But we really do focus on the stuff that Edinburgh Zoo, or not just Edinburgh Zoo, RZSS is actively involved in. So we look at things like the Bodongo Conservation Trail, which is to do with protecting chimpanzees. And we'll also look at our work dealing with some giant armadillos in the Americas, and our work with pine flies up north, which are a critically endangered insect that nobody really knows about. We talk about Edinburgh's part, maybe bringing the Partula snails back from extinction. So everybody hears about London Zoo being kind of the pioneers of that, but Edinburgh had a major role in that. And I'd argue actually probably more than London Zoo, but I don't want to cause too many fights. And also, just for example, at the moment, we've just had a team from Edinburgh Zoo go out to the Pentlands in Edinburgh and gather up some critically endangered pond snails that we are going to breed and then re-release back into the Pentland Hills. So there's a lot that goes on. It's a really cool job. But outside of that, I am also involved in a few academic things. So I am involved in a few publications that are hopefully going to come out in the near future. So I have worked in entomology. I would describe myself as a freelance entomologist, which is the science around not just insects. It's mainly insects I work with. I work with a lot of the small wasted insects, which are the hymenopterans, the wasps and the ants and things. But with invertebrates really, and I'm mostly a geneticist within that bracket. I've discovered 2 species. Hopefully, we're looking to get the publications on one of those, which is a wasp, done fairly soon because I've already done the genetic work. The beetle we're not too sure about. We need to see if that's actually something new. So I do a little bit of work on that. I'm also part of an education research group in Edinburgh University called SURGE, which is the Sustainability and Education Research Group. So I do a lot of work on sustainability within secondary education mostly. So I'm hopefully going to be writing a few papers for that to come out in the future as well.
A very busy man all round. Very busy
Yeah, I
man
got
all
quite a
round.
lot to do. Yeah.
And then
And
obviously
then
you
also,
Time to eat.
YouTube, yeah, which actually
YouTube.
takes up so much time. It is unreal how much time this takes up as a hobby.
Yeah, it really does. And it's not just as simple as, oh, I'm going to go feed today and I'll get the camera out and I'll just shoot it and then I'll post it. I wish it was that simple. We don't do a great deal of it. The little bits that we have done, it is hard work.
Yeah,
but it's enjoyable
I
hard work. I'm not trying to diminish them that we don't enjoy it, or else we wouldn't do it. But it can take up some time.
Yeah, I logged some of my time recently, and you're talking about for most of my videos, it was taking about an hour per minute of edited content. So that includes all the setup of the cameras and stuff, and working with the animals, and actually doing what's in the video, and then into the editing and stuff. So you're talking about an 18-minute video is about 18 hours of work. Gets a little bit quicker as the videos get longer, and it's a little bit more intensive the shorter the videos are, just because it's the same setup time no matter what you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a huge amount of time that goes into this.
I do some social media work for Pro Herper over in Belgium as well, and when I get videos for him to do, 100%. It's not as simple as just uploading and off you go. There's some serious work to it. We'll just run through the chat here because there's a few more people that's come in. So we've got Lee from Hellfire Herbs. Luck with that, Mac. He is a Scotsman. Good luck with that, Mac. He is. My accent was all over the place earlier. I've kind of calmed down a little bit with the conversations, but it will probably jump back in later on. I did see Catty had popped in as well. Good evening, Catty. Try to find out where everyone is. BCS Exotics. Yay, a fellow Scot. Good evening. Yaz is here. I'm here, motherfuckers. Good evening, Yaz. Behave yourself. There's a business just been set up in Samworth, which is Reptiles for Mental Health. Sen, it's fantastic. That's from Mike. And Benji was here as well. Yaz, don't forget to like the podcast, please. Yaz has a potty mouth. She does indeed. Okay, then. So now that we've got a little bit of history about you, a little bit of information.
Question.
Oh, the question that Donna asked. Donna asks questions all the while. Where was it?
Yeah, I know.
What with teaching challenging kids? Have any of them now got a pet based on yourself?
Only one that I know of. One of the students I work with has actually went and bought some rainbow millipedes.
Nice.
Unfortunately, you'll find working with these kids, it's not always the case, but quite often the families aren't as supportive as you would like them to be. So quite often, as I was saying, the only really positive adult role models they have in their life are when they come to our sessions. So we've got a completely separate building for the school, just because we're trying to limit kind of the people they are exposed to in some of these scenarios. But yeah, it's nice to try and get them involved, but quite often it almost stops at our doors. It's quite hard to take that influence home, which is it's a sad reality of working kind of in the area that I do.
Yeah. Cathy's just said as well, there are some NHS trusts that are working with reptiles for therapy as well. Yeah, there was something in the news not too long ago, wasn't there, Cathy, that touched on that. Okay, so now we know about Dan. Why inverts, Dan? Why inverts and the misunderstood, the unloved? Why that and not the common sort of kept animals?
So a lot of it actually was down to kind of what was available to me. So the school that I work at is actually the school I went to as a teenager. And I didn't have very much success at school. It wasn't really until I left school and I got dragged into Wales by my partner that I ended up going for a foundation degree and getting into uni and going to the academic side. But when I was growing up, we really weren't well off. We were nowhere near as impoverished as a lot of the people around us. But if some of the people from like the welfare areas were to see our family, you would notice that we're quite poor. It definitely wasn't like the most prosperous upbringing, let's say. So I couldn't afford many pets. We did have a dog for a while, my dad had a parrot before I was born, but then he had to get rid of it when my mum was pregnant because it bit her, and she decided that was a no-go with a baby coming. So what ended up happening was I had always wanted a pet. I've always been fascinated by animals. So the only animals that were available to me were the ones I could find, stuff in my garden. So although we didn't have, lots of pets kicking around the house, we did have plenty of old Tupperware and stuff like that, plastic boxes. And I did have a garden with rocks and slabs and stuff that I could find stuff from. So it really started there, collecting my own and bring them into the house. I've actually got an amazing photo. I should have looked out for this, where I am about, 5-year-old, and I'm holding a massive toad that I've brought into the house. And my mum was petrified of these things. So as soon as I brought it in, she had left. And my dad's got a picture of me in my nice white Adidas shirt, which, we didn't have many of those. So it was quite a big deal that I had this, holding this frog just covered in mud that I'd found under the hut outside.
Fantastic.
And that's really where it all started.
Fantastic. Do you know, I think when you've got a story like that, rather than just, I was always interested, like, I've actually gone out and found my own pets. It means that a little bit more, I think. And that's not to diminish anybody else's. I've kept animals all my life. I've been interested all my life. Just that when that's the environment you're brought up in, and that's the area as well. Catty said she did the exact same thing.
I think it's a story that's kind of common to a lot of people. A lot of people that are interested in this hobby, it has always been an interest. So even if, the exotics haven't always been available to them, there's always been some sort of interest out there. Because originally I wanted to be a herpetologist. So when I eventually got into uni, it was herpetology I was looking at. I went on a research trip to Peru, to the Peruvian Amazon, which is where I found the wasp and the beetle. And I met this amazing guy called Dr. Ross Piper. So he's quite a big name in entomology. He really is quite big. And there was a show on the BBC called Wild Burma where he was the lead scientist. So he's incredible. He's got some TED Talks and stuff on YouTube, so look him up because he's amazing. But he's an entomologist. And I went into this trip thinking I'm going to be a herpetologist. I was looking for all these amazing snakes and amphibians you can find out there, poison dart frogs. I spent like 2 weeks out at midnight raking around buttress roots trying to find a bushmaster, which was my dream to see. I never found it. I was out in swamps in the middle of the night looking for anacondas, which I couldn't find. But then Ross was showing me all these amazing insects, which you barely had to step 2 feet from camp to find. Some really, really incredible stuff. If you're looking for cool things to look up corpophagus beetles, which are amazing blue beetles that eat dead things, and handsome fungus beetles, which are incredibly diverse. These are amazing animals. And he really got me hooked on insects instead, on inverts and stuff. And I went back into my degree and then started to pick all my module choices to start to align with that, really to get into this field of entomology.
Isn't it mad how one interaction can then change your trajectory of where you think you're heading in life? It's incredible.
The animals were a large part of that. So seeing these insects was amazing, but it was the enthusiasm that Ross brought to that trip that got me hooked. I think if there was other people showing me, I would have been interested, but I wouldn't have got as addicted to these animals as I did. And that made a massive difference for me.
What was his name again, just so I can take a note for later?
Dr. Ross Piper. He's amazing. He's got some crazy videos on YouTube as well. There was one where he was out in the heart of Burma, and there was this hole, and he wanted to see what was inside the hole, so he stuck his hand in and it bit him. So you're talking about, this is somewhere where it's kind of war-torn at the time. It's the first scientific expedition ever been there. You are not just hours, you're days away from any hospital, and he had to just kind of wait and see if it was something that was going to kill him, essentially. He kind of knew it wasn't, because he had a look in the hole and seen furry legs, and if you see furry legs, it's probably not something that's actually going to lead to your death. Yeah, Ross is amazing. Ross is really cool. He is apart from Steve Irwin, he is my biggest inspiration in this field.
I've got a note, so I'll make sure we share some information on him later in the community.
Try dragging me on the podcast one day.
He's a busy man, but he's brilliant. I'd imagine it's something you would be interested in.
Donna's just said that your isopod setups are amazing, and that was one of the directions I wanted to go anyway. Spiders, isopods, millipedes, cockroaches. So what's so special about your isopod setups that Donna finds amazing?
I don't know. I'm not entirely too sure. So I do put a fair amount of time into it. I put a lot of research into what goes into my isopod setup. So I really look at what's found in their local areas.
Yeah.
So something that's quite handy for people out there. I'll maybe make a video in the future because it's quite technical. But if you know your species, you can find what's called a blast sequence, which is if somebody's done any genetic work on it, they've taken this sequence and they put it onto a database called blast. If you then go into that sequence, you can get coordinates for where that sequence was taken from. And then if you've got the coordinates for what your species is, you can find exactly on the map where it is. And then using those coordinates, you can get stuff like geological samples and things like that from other websites. So you can start to look at what is exactly in your area. You know, sometimes within 10, 20 feet of the rough coordinates where your animal was just, found or sampled from. So I use stuff like that to look at the local environment of where these things are from, and then I try to recreate that as much as possible. I'm not a big fan of people who go for these, what they would call hugely naturalist setups, because I find what that is people just throwing plants into an enclosure to make it look nice and green, but that's not always where these animals live. You know, some animals, they might live in an area where there is no plants at all. It's maybe just moss. There's maybe just algae that grows in it. So putting plants in there might look cool, but it's maybe not that great for them. They might need something much more humid, in which case having a plant could either soak up that moisture, or a lot of time what happens is if something needs a little bit drier, you put a plant in, and in order to keep that plant alive, you have to have a much more humid enclosure than what they would like. So I try to kind of base it on where the animals are. But it can be just little things, like, for example... Sorry?
What was the website?
It's called Blast. It's all capitals. If you look for that, that's like a genetic sequencing website. So whenever we take samples
yeah,
from
I think I
animals,
found it.
yeah, and then
I managed to close this browser.
not on every sequence, but on quite a lot of them, you'll get coordinates of where that sequence was taken. It's especially when it's a wild animal that's been caught. That's
Is that the basic local alignment search tool?
Yes. Yeah. So that's for looking up genome sequences and stuff.
The National Library of Medicine, isn't it, that does that?
So you might be on the one that's more for viral stuff and bacterial strains and things.
Right.
I'll see if I can get a link for the animal one at some point. Because they are technically separate, but I think it's just the difference of clicking one button on the website somewhere.
Fair enough.
Do you think?
I'll look at these, I try to find out where they're from, and then recreate that as much as I can, while still keeping in mind that this isn't the wild. This is, you know, my room. There's going to be things that are different, so then I've got to make the best of that situation, and then try and be as realistic as possible with these as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to talk about them just once, but that's what I've done with the dragon snakes. I've been on to iNaturalist taking different information off of there. But yeah, that's the only time I've done it. I used to do it in fish quite a lot with the biotopes. It seems to be quite common in fish keeping, and I know there are a few people now who are trying to keep. I don't know what the direct translation is when it comes to herpiculture, in making those setups more geographically correct for them. But within fish, it's called biotopes. And I've done it a few times for Amazonian builds and stuff in the fish tanks, but like mostly mines are just naturalistic. It's something that I would like to get into down the line, but it's finding that information. So being able to get those websites out would be really, really cool.
It can be hard. It's not something that's generally known in the hobby. It's something that's quite widely known in academic circles, how to find this information. But then there's not a great crossover in that. There's not a lot of guys who are into that academic sphere that branch into the exotics or the hobby side of the exotic animals.
Yeah. Do you think that the invert world is becoming more popular, or do you still think it's widely misunderstood?
I think it's definitely becoming more popular. I see it at school quite a lot. So there used to be some, especially when I was at school, there were some opinions about invertebrates that nowadays people would just find shocking. You know, what people thought about spiders, or even you know, your reptiles and stuff. Some of the opinions about them were shocking. It was along the lines of the whole kill it with fire scenario that people come up with. Whereas now you didn't really see that. Kids are genuinely interested in this stuff. They do understand about biodiversity. A lot of time when we're teaching it in school, they already know what that term means. If you go back maybe 3 or 4 years, that might not have even been the case. So that could be quite a recent change, especially with all the stuff that's coming around with climate change. I think kids are definitely more aware of that, and I think with that comes a little bit more of understanding and a love for the natural world.
Yeah, Shockloader's just said biome. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe biome is the right word, creating little eco biomes, maybe. Shockloaded, I don't know.
Minecraft.
Yeah, Shockloaded. like, are you in the communities? I don't think I've seen your name before, but I don't know who you are. So just let us know who you are, so I can try and
Hiding
remember.
behind the screen name.
Try and remember. It's Gary. Okay.
It's Gary.
Yeah, it's Gary. There we
Yeah.
go. There we go. So I've asked this question to a couple of other invert guests that we've had on. What do you think is the predominant rise for invert keeping?
Like what's causing the rise?
Yeah.
A lot of it actually, I think, is social media.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely something about, not too long ago, it was really hard to find out information about these animals. Never mind finding out just that they exist. Try to find out how to look after them was really, really hard. You had to be involved with some people that were really into the hobby, or you had to be, trawling through forums and stuff online was the closest you could get. With the rise of social media, I think information for a lot of this stuff has become much more available, and I think people are showing off these animals. So they're seeing that, like, for example, the isopods, it's not just a woodlouse. It's not just, this little pill bug that you're getting in your garden. They are incredibly and amazingly diverse. And it's the same for the native species. It's more than just one. There is an incredible diversity out there. And I think that's drawn people. I think the one thing that invertebrates have over a lot of reptiles is that it's a cheaper entry into the hobby. So you can get some, high-end animals that do cost a lot of money, but you can also get some really, really interesting animals that people will essentially give away for free. Again, if we look at isopods, dairy cow isopods, you'll probably never have to pay for them. If you ask around, somebody will give you them for free, and most likely they'll give you the tub and everything with them, so they're already set up. And it is as simple as a plastic box.
Yaz, have you heard this? We don't charge for isopods for dairy cows. Just saying. Just saying. Yaz sorted a couple of us out with a couple of hundred dairy cows the other week. Before the AAH,
you might have to pay.
Yeah. No,
that's one thing.
Yeah, we were into the hundreds. I'm just taking the mic. We were into the hundreds when she sorted it out. Do you think there's a difference between keeping a display animal or keeping a colony?
I think there definitely is. I find display animals, it's almost, sometimes in a sense, it's quite a selfish way of keeping an animal. So I've got, for example, right beside me here, actually, I've got Dinner Plate, who is my Goliath bird eater, my favourite species of spider, which is the Ferrophosa apophysis. And he is in a big glass enclosure with, he's got the soil and everything he needs, but he wouldn't be in something like that. He would like something dark and compact where you can't really be seen that much. Yeah. That's why he spends a lot of time in his burrow, actually, really, than out patrolling, which males would be doing at this size and age. So if I really wanted to keep him in a way that was good for him, it would be almost entirely dark. There'd be very little light coming through, more similar to how I keep my cockroaches, which are feeders. So they are in this nice controlled space, which is temperature controlled. Not that it isn't temperature controlled, but it's temperature controlled, it's humidity controlled. I'm really, really careful about the feeding, mainly because it's what transfers over to a lot of my other animals. But the husbandry for them is probably slightly better just because of the enclosures I keep these other animals in. Sometimes display enclosures aren't always the best for the animal, but it's the best for us. And I think that's the trade-off when you're keeping these animals. Sometimes we've got a habit of acting like we are always doing everything that's best for the animal. But I think we do have to actually look in a wee bit and admit that, no, there is some selfish aspects of this hobby. And that's actually okay. It's not like it massively is detrimental to the animal, but I do definitely think it's something that's worth owning up to in a sense.
So Alex, who we interviewed, had on the live-ish episode when I was at the IHS, he was one of the first people that had openly said to us that I don't keep my animal in, and mainly because of the species. The Hydrosaurus think that the glass is run-throughable, which is not. So he's like, I don't see my animals. He says, I've got them in boxes that aren't transparent, he says, or more recently grow tents, because that's what's better for them. And it was quite eye-opening when you hear of species that don't do well in the glass tanks that we all use. And he's just like, yeah, my interactions when I have to then interact with them, he says, and I get a different experience with them. I don't see them all the while. And it was a really interesting way to look at it as well. Mm-hmm. How many species of cockroaches do you keep for feeders?
At the moment, only 2. I've got dubias and I've got red runners. I do have some Madagascan hissers, but those are more outreach animals. So I take them out to show stuff.
Yeah.
I've never used hissers as feeders because I was at the zoo once when we were using them as feeders, and the noise of a hissing cockroach screaming as it's being eaten will forever be in my brain. And I know it's not necessarily something that they are thinking about, and their brains work entirely different to ours, but it's still something that's in there. It's just strangely sad.
So I've just set up just before the IHS, I set up a colony of Panchloras, the Cuban banana roaches. So I've got two colonies of them, hopefully just starting off. And then my friend started off a colony of red runners. So he was like, "What do you want me to do?" And I was like, "You can do red runners. I'll leave you to do them." Because
banana roaches are a nightmare. Have you kept them before?
Nope, I'm well aware. Well aware.
Yeah, good luck.
Well aware. So they seem to be doing okay. I've not fed anything off yet. I'm just leaving them to do the thing and to populate, hopefully, and get a good. I want to be able to reach in and just grab a handful and chuck them away in the end.
Have you got adults yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got
the wife's found one downstairs. Yeah, I've had the earache. I've had the earache already. So yeah. Gary, he bought
really cool cockroaches. They're amazing.
Yeah, Gary bought an 80 pounds worth of colony to start up feeders, and he lost them all. So he feels a bit sore on that, on the bananas. So he does. But yeah, I've got Mabel will save me. Yes, so I've got Mabel coming to stay with us, which is Yaz's skunk. So she won't save me. She'll save Steph. She'll find them all, won't she? And the random locusts that have escaped as well. It's good.
See, I'm quite lucky because obviously I'm in Scotland, so it's not very warm here. I heat my room, so my room is hit to 26 degrees, and then I work on the individual tanks from there. So I've not got anything that really needs kept below that, apart from arguably actually some of the isopod species, and anything else I heat up to that. So the cockroaches are never, if they do escape, they're never going to leave this room because it's generally too cold anywhere in the house for them. Yeah. So it's fairly safe for me here.
When we moved animal rooms, so we moved out of the smaller room into the middle room, and I had red runners for feeders at the very start when we moved in, and I moved out like 15 months later, and there was still red runners in that room. And we stopped. We only fed like once or twice. So when me and my friend decided that we were going to breed roaches, he's like, "Oh, do you want me to breed, Mac?" I was like, "Yeah, you can do the red runners. You can do the red runners. I'll do something else." Catty says she lets squid out to catch the odd locust that jumps out when I'm grabbing them out of the box. And Dan's other half here, our house cat gets immeasurable enrichment from going into Dan's bug room and catching the feeders that have escaped. Hi, Tiny Temper. I mean, that's amazing for a Scottish woman to be called. I presume it's a woman. I don't know.
Yes, it's accurate.
I was a bit presumptuous there, but Tiny Temper, amazing. A little Scottish woman called Tiny Temper. Brilliant. How many different species do you keep, and what are you working with predominantly? That's one of the questions that I should have asked early on because I started asking.
I honestly don't know, actually. I kind of lost count of a lot of them. I've got quite a few species of beetle, so actually just in beetles alone, which are mostly in grubs now, I've probably got about 20 species or something sitting up there. I've got quite a few adult tarantulas. I've not got so many slings now. I've got maybe about 18 slings, I think, and a good branch of juveniles. But there's at least 50 species in this room. At least species. There's probably quite a bit more than that. I don't want to say too much because Louise doesn't actually probably know how many types of animals I've got in here.
Steph's the same. So Steph is constantly got what she calls animal bans on me. And she's had to put it down as an animal ban because she tells me you're not allowed to buy them anymore. But then there's always folks that are just giving stuff away or trading stuff. And like, well, no money crossed hands. No money crossed hands. It's completely different.
I've not bought any in a while, actually. But we've got a decent collection here.
Good.
I'm starting to sway away. I've decided that I was getting a few more different species of tarantulas and stuff. So tarantulas is probably the most numerous at the moment in terms of species, not in terms of like individuals. But I'm moving away from some of the old world species. So a lot of my work that I was doing was looking at Central and South American animals. So I'm going to start honing in on that with a lot of the animals that I keep. So I'm going to really start looking at that Central and Central and South American animals, because these are the places that I've been and I've actually seen it in the wild. So I do know kind of what to expect, and those are the animals that I was working with. So in the future, a lot of my old worlds and stuff I will be maybe selling off and things. Apart from a few, I'll keep my poke. So I've got a nice Pessilophyra metallica, which I'll always keep. She's cracking. But apart from that, a lot of them I'm going to stick to the South American species, which most people tend to stray away from when they go towards the old worlds.
Yeah.
But I really like the South Americas.
Is Louise involved with the animals as well, or is it just yourself?
She is. So Louise was a scientist as well. So she was a geneticist for the Scottish government. Mostly with plants though. So whereas I was also working with genetics, but I was looking at animals and parasites off those small invertebrates. Whereas Louise went more into plants. So she was involved in looking at some novel barcodes for mosses, which I don't know whatever came of that, but that was some really interesting work and some like world first work that she was looking at as part of her master's dissertation. And then she went to the Scottish government and she was working with a lot of crop species. So she was looking at like potatoes, and she was coming up with, I think, novel, I want to say, she'll maybe be able to tell us, but I think it was miniature satellite markers for raspberries. So looking at ways to sequence and identify those. But then she came away from that and she now trains dogs. So Louise is now a dog trainer.
It's funny that Jurgen, who I work with, I hope he won't mind me saying, his wife, she also works as scientifically for agriculture as well. So it's not the first time I've heard people that relationship, which is quite niche, I suppose. And it's, within the last 6 months, I've heard it twice, which is just bizarre. It's a little bit of Mike ran out of funding for the moss stuff.
So that's Professor Mike Wilkinson, who she was working with, who's a big name in plant genetics. And I believe, was he, again, Louise will be able to tell us, but I believe he headed up the team that ran the first genome marker for plants. So he was the first person to really look at ways to sequence and identify plants. I can't remember if he was involved. I think he was involved in the first ever full genome that was produced as well, which was off a plant that I can't remember the name of. But yeah, she's worked with some really cool names as well.
It's incredibly geeky stuff, isn't it, to talk about? And it is mad, isn't it, that how these worlds sort of cross over. They tether on the edge of each other, and you do find that people really start to branch out into what they like. It's really
there is a lot more. There is a lot more crossover happening as well, and I think again, actually, it is down to social media. If you go onto a lot of university websites or university YouTube channels, you can get the lectures that people are paying, thousands, tens of thousands a year to see. A lot of these unis are recording them and putting them up there, so you can find out a lot of this information. Then you've got undergraduate students making videos about what they're learning, so they're trying to put it across in a more layman-friendly way, and professors breaking it down in their own YouTube channels as well. So something that was really restricted to basically kind of posh folk that could afford to go to university is now open to much more people, which is really the nice side of social media. So there is obviously bad sides to social media as well, but that's one of the amazing things that's coming out of it is the educational content. YouTube is one of probably the top educational platform in the world, and really that's ever existed.
Yeah, it's obviously it's knowing the source,
isn't it?
Say again, Andy.
YouTube's double-edged sword, because you're right, it is, but with all the shit that's constantly being fought on it as well, a lot of people don't see it like that. So we're sitting in an age now where YouTube has more education on it than pretty much anywhere else on the internet, but we've got an entire generation that are fighting to stop people using it because they don't see the reason of why. I think
part of it as well is it's also very easy to get bad information on these. So I think that's where we'll see this evolution over time, where people learn to be able to discriminate certain sources. So sources that maybe aren't quite as truthful as others. And we will start to pick out, what's good and bad. Just like what happened, with radios and newspapers. It's the same sort of evolution for technology. We'll see that happen on YouTube as well. But it's really easy to get bad information on YouTube too. One thing I would say is if you're watching a channel and they're a bit sketchy about perhaps their qualifications or their experience or anything like that, when you ask, that's maybe somebody to stay away from. A lot of people who are genuinely trying to give you good advice are very open about where that advice is coming from.
We've been really clear from the start that we're just You know, if we want to get someone on to find out information, we'll try our hardest to get the right person on and get the right information about whatever species or subject that the community want to understand from. But I think we mentioned it like lots early on that, you know, we aren't experts. I think between Andy and myself, we've only got like 12 or 15 years experience with the modern day reptiles and amphibians. So we know nothing in comparison.
You know, that's over a decade. That's a lot of time to be spending with animals. You're going to pick up a fair amount in that.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of people that have been doing it for 3 decades, 4 decades, you know, and it's.
But I will step in on that one and say there's people who've been doing it for 3 or 4 decades that are so stuck in the past that what they're trying to teach is so outdated. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, it's trying to keep with the times. It's trying to keep everything relevant. And it's admitting when you get something wrong and there's room to move on and improve from.
Yeah. I think that's the main thing. There's a lot of guys who do argue against this, and a lot of it comes from a place of kind of ego or pride. And it's not so much that they don't know what's being said is true. It's more that they don't want to admit that what they've been doing for all that time was wrong. In a sense. Which I don't think is a bad thing. If you're working with the information that you've got, at that point you're doing a good job. You're doing the best you can. That was what was available. It doesn't make you wrong if the information was wrong. You know, the time you're working with what's correct.
I'll change that because the information wasn't wrong for the time. The information's now been updated to suit better. None of the information anyone's ever worked with is wrong at the time that they've used it. It's when it's moved forward and people aren't willing to move with it is when it becomes wrong, if that makes sense.
Just to finish off on the plant stuff, Louise has just said it was his team that found the plant barcode. And then every day is a school day. It's good. You know, it's important that people are open to changes and progression. I think if we aren't open to change and progression, we're just going to stand still, and it's going to be easy for the opposition to then pick and choose apart what we're doing. And obviously, you guys up in Scotland are facing it. You know, you're a front line at the moment, aren't you? So it's it's important that we are progressing better as well.
It's something I'm looking to address at some point, as a lot of these what's coming out for the RSPCA and things. I need to be quite careful because of the institutes that I work for.
Yeah,
to be really carefully what I put out there. But I am planning to do something because I've not been too shy about the fact that I hate the SSPCA. I think they're a bunch of idiots. You know, you're talking about some of the most qualified people in the SSPCA have, you know, way less like less degrees than me, way less time working with any of these animals and stuff, but suddenly they're touted as experts, which I would never describe myself as. So I don't know. I think it's weird that they're pushing these people forward.
I think it's the agenda. It's the agenda, isn't it? Like they've got an agenda, so they're trying to say that they are these either self-proclaimed or proclaimed experts when it suits their agenda, and that's the difference. You know, you as a hobbyist who's got their heart in this, and as someone who's come up through academia as well, like it means the world to you. You know, and you can see it for what it is. Unfortunately, it's not the best. You know, there's a couple of really good people at the forefront of it. You know, Chris is working tirelessly with his videos. He's in constant conversation with Lisa as well, who's working hard with it. And both of them are back and forth with Repta, RRK, and the other guys behind the scenes. I don't want to mention too many names because I don't know who's publicly said that they're supporting from behind the scenes. But, you know, there's a lot of good names behind them. Helping them with the right information. Donna and Chris are off to Parliament on Thursday. Good luck to Donna and Chris. I hope all goes well there.
I thought that was yesterday.
I thought it was yesterday as well. Yeah. Tiny Temper O is there. I'm hopeful the Scottish Government did a massive consultation into dog training with e-collars and went with the evidence, i.e. banned them. I hope they'll do the same with this. Me and Chris are going to Parliament. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the Scottish Government, one thing I'll say about them is that they are good with these consultations. It's not a decision they take lightly. So I do think that the Scottish Government is slightly better when it comes to like lobbying and stuff than we see south of the border. So there's much less influence
government shit.
parties. Yeah. Didn't wouldn't want to say that too much, but there's a lot goes on in Westminster that is against the rules, whereas I think the Scottish government, they're held to much more scrutiny because, some of the legislators down south aren't really keen on it. So it is a little bit more above board, I do think. And with that comes, as Louise was saying, they do a lot more consultative work and stuff on these. I don't think it's something that will go ahead. I think the trickiness around these whitelists is very hard to overcome, especially when you have experts talking against it and you've not really got experts on the other side talking against it. You've got a couple of names that actually don't have really any credentials in the field. I don't really think it'll pass through Parliament. I do also think the other thing is for example, the agricultural lobby is very, very powerful in the UK. And if this ban was to come in, they're going to be massively worrying about what's going to happen in terms of livestock. So anything that comes into there in terms of animal welfare is essentially going to affect them at some point. So I think they'll get involved at some point as it's starting to process, and we'll see it quieting down quite a lot behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Which isn't always a good thing. But
no,
yeah.
We can but hope. Louise just said they also have Parliament open to the public as well, so they can't hide, which is good.
Yeah, so you can just go in and watch them.
Which is
Parliament
good.
here is you don't get in.
Yeah.
No.
But I think the other thing is it's like the SSPCA, and this is me talking firsthand from trying to communicate with them, are very quick to try and shut down or contradict what they've said.
Yeah.
Through my experience talking to them, that they don't like to be put out there. So they picked a subject, they've rolled with the subject, someone's fought back on the subject, and they don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, so
And that's my take on them.
I've played around with doing an open source literature review, open peer review, looking at this kind of subject and essentially submitting it to open source so everybody can see it and just seeing if they'll respond at all. But it's a lot of work, that's the type of thing that could be like 2 years in the making.
Yeah.
When I've got that much time, but it's something I've played around with. I've kind of started doing some background research behind the scenes. So that's something that might be in the future. But that's also expensive. If I'm going to publish open source, it's going to cost me like 300 quid at least.
Yeah.
So I'll have to
You're a YouTuber, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
It is bad.
If we can just jump back to the inverts and stuff, or else we're going to be talking politics all night. And,
Yeah.
And it's I want to focus on the good, interesting, fun stuff.
It's depressing. So
It is. What makes the invert so rewarding for yourself?
So rewarding. I don't know. I think there's something really satisfying about looking after things. So seeing something grow and seeing it grow in quite a short time, which you get with a lot of inverts. There's quite short gestation times and generational times, which means they hatch and grow quite quickly. There's something really rewarding about seeing that and knowing that you're the person that's kind of facilitated that. I think it's the same kind of thing that draws people to gardening. It's the exact same feeling. You're seeing something grow. I think that's really cool when you're working with inverts. Sometimes with reptiles, there's quite slow growth, so you don't always see it. You don't notice your snake necessarily getting bigger. My little hognose there, I was looking at some pictures there earlier, and she's massive, but there's never really been a point in time where I've seen her get bigger. Whereas my spiders, they have a molt every few months or couple of years, and you look at them and they are markedly bigger, and I think that's really cool as well, seeing that progress. But I do also think it's the simplicity of these animals. It doesn't take a lot out of your day. It's generally a joy to go and do those tasks. It breaks up your day a little bit at times, and it gives you something routine that you're working on.
Yeah, it's with the school. I normally give the school a mantis in January. I go into Foundation 1, which is the nursery, and they do they're teaching their kids about pets, so it's a teacher-led nursery, and I always take in a few inverts and maybe a snake or something, and I always leave a mantis with them in January, and then it's great because they get to see that mantis from January to July, and it's normally fully grown by then, a good 6 months, and it's fully grown, and the kids love it. We've had some serious names for them, but I just leave them one, normally an orchid mantis, because it's quite pretty and it's not as threatening as a ghost mantis or something. But yeah, the
Yeah.
kids really enjoy it, and it's for that reason they see this life cycle going through. It's really cool.
So the other thing with the inverts is really interesting. I mean, I've noticed it with the King Assassins, is how much they change with their appearance as they go through each of their stages. So, like with the hognose, you said, the snake just gets bigger.
Yeah.
Colours and appearance don't overly change on the whole with hognoses. I mean, that's something I breed anyway, so I know quite a bit on them. But with a lot of the invert stuff, every time it molts, it looks like a new animal.
Yeah. It's amazing. Some of the changes that these animals go through is incredible. And it doesn't need to be exotic, you know, it can be. We've got some amazing animals in the UK that go through some quite drastic changes in their life cycle. Like the first time you see a child catch a caterpillar, see it go into that pupae and then emerge as a butterfly is crazy, because they don't always link those animals. And even if they know that that's to happen, they've learned about the life cycle, there's just something different about seeing that actually happening. And that day when you see it emerge, or you go into school the next day and there's suddenly a butterfly flying around your cage rather than just this little brown, hanging sack.
Yeah, I completely agree. My daughter had Atlas moths, and she got them in the cocoons. And then it's obviously cocoon to moth is what comes out of those cocoons is next level.
Yeah, the
Something
little,
that small should
little
not have
ones
something that big in it.
yeah, the little one's just in it with the frogs, going from
Yeah.
tadpoles to actual frogs, and he's like, "Oh my god, that's amazing, Dad! How does that happen?" So now he's like fascinated with the metamorphosis stage of frogs.
Yeah.
So he is. When we found our first froglet, he's like, "Can we keep it?" I was like, "Yeah, of course."
See, I think and as well, you should always encourage that. If you teach these bairns that nature is something that is to be avoided or you can't interact with, they're going to grow into adults thinking that. Whatever you nurture in them as young, it's the opinions that are going to stick through. So you really need to be pushing children to collect insects and stuff. We've got this attitude at the moment in the UK, I think, of leaving our wild places wild, and that means not interacting with them. Whereas really, we should be out picking up sticks and breaking the odd branch, and you're bringing insects home and stuff like that. Obviously, we don't want to disturb things that are critically endangered, so maybe stay away from some certain newts or snakes if you find them. But there's no
Yeah.
reason you can't take animals home and see that happen yourself and then release them. There's no reason you can't take a few sticks or some moss home and make your own terrarium. I think it's something we need to really work hard on encouraging in the UK, because people are moving away from it, and it's a shame.
Yeah, we do a lot of our own foraging for
Yeah,
sticks and
same here.
moss. We're quite lucky that where we are, even though we're in the middle of a city, we've got some really good access to some natural land.
I mean, all the stuff in my sailfin enclosure, the sticks, the moss, plants, bits and pieces, they're all foraged.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's dangers with foraging stuff for enclosures. With a lot of the exotics, it's not actually as dangerous as you think, because the parasites and things we have in the UK haven't necessarily evolved to target those species. There's some generalists, but it's pretty safe. A lot of people think, there's animals going to die as soon as they put a wild stick or a wild leaf in the enclosure. It's generally not the case, and if you think it is, just chuck it in the oven on quite a low setting for a few hours, and that will deal with most things that you're going to have to worry about.
The moss never lasts, so we always do a fresh forage every spring, because then it will get through the majority of the year before it really starts to die off. And it's just something we've always done in February, March, go and get new moss to tie into the enclosures and stuff. And the little one loves it. He'll take a rucksack with him, we put a plastic bag in it, and he'll find sticks and stones and everything to collect. And then in January as well, we went and we collected the tadpoles, and he thought it was brilliant. See these the frog spawn, then tadpoles, and then froglets. It's really good. Hashtag moss is amazing. I don't have the best luck with moss, Lou. Maybe I need to get your details off Dan and get some good tips off you, because
Louise,
I've tried
I get quite
everything.
annoyed sometimes when I'm at Louise, because I just want to every now and then. There's different ways that you can approach some of these hobbies. When you're looking at insects and that, it's quite good to kind of move through an area, because then you can find a lot of diversity, and you're not spending too long in one place and you're still finding quite a lot of things. You find with herpetologists, they're just hikers. They will just walk until they come across something and then they'll stop for a bit. Whereas people like Louise that are into moss and plants, they will spend a whole day on half a square foot area just looking at everything in there, and it's just kind of the difference between some of these aspects of the hobby.
It's
So I get quite annoyed when I'm out with these.
I've tried everything from sphagnum moss from the garden centre to moss mixes from dart frog keepers, and I don't have much luck at all, and that's why I just
A lot of, so a lot of mosses need an overwintering period, which is why they never last. So they need to go into a colder period and go dormant, otherwise they won't pop up in the next cycle. You know, they do flower and stuff. One of the cool things about moss is they still reproduce through sperm, so they need to have water at certain times to allow for that actually to happen, apart from certain cuttings and things. So there's a lot that goes into moss that you maybe aren't quite as aware of when you're just sold a bag of moss.
Oh,
So
absolutely, absolutely not. The banana roaches that they've got a good 4 inch of soil. I've just topped that with sphagnum moss. I looked in it today, and it looks about dead. And it's got no light, so that's obviously they're in a transparent box, but they haven't got a light on them as such. The only bit of moss I've had any luck with at the moment is in the turtle tank. So it's on I've got a floating cork panel, and I've seen some cushion moss, and I'm going to use that cushion moss because that's about as much as I know about moss. And I've just stuck that on this cork panel, which is then floating. So it's got a constant water supply. It's got really good lights above it, and that seems to be doing okay-ish. Yeah. But everything else, it just dead.
Cushion moss is quite a good one. A lot of the strains are really good for terrariums. I think there's quite a lot of cushion moss that are essentially purely tropical, so they'll never go through the dormancy period. Even the ones in the UK can reproduce and go through full cycles without needing to go dormant. So they're quite good ones to find. I've actually got a bag here somewhere.
100% Lude. Like I'm in the.
It's got a bag of collected moss right here.
Brilliant. So. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, 100%. I'm collecting from the East Midlands countryside, and I'm sticking it into tropical vivarium. So 100%, it is definitely, it's too hot, and even though I try putting it in at the bottom of them, this room itself gets to like 28 during the summer, and it doesn't drop below 19, 20. So it's a warm room all year round. So that's not doing it any good. But the fact that it's free and it's from down the road, and I get to get in the outside and touch this with the little in. Yeah,
a good wee tip for your moss is also record the thing that you found it on. So, for example, moss, you could have it in a terrarium, but if it grew on rock and you don't put it on rock, it might never survive because it's not going to have like the runoff and stuff that it needs to be able to shed that water really quickly.
Okay.
If you put it in soil, it could be just too damp. So also take a wee note of where you found it. You know, if you found it on bark, try and pop it on a piece of cork, and you might find that will make a big difference between whether your moss lives or not.
Okay. Yaz has just said her moss is in the freezer. She's just got bags of it that she freezes and then brings out when she needs it.
Yeah.
But it's
you can dry moss out really well, and it can still come back to life.
Yeah, I was looking for it. The bag that I've got now. Yeah, so the one that I tried was the dusk moss mix, and it's just dried and blended. But there's a lot of sphagnum moss in there. I don't know what other. I've never had. Maybe I'll send it up to you, and you can have a play with it, Dan. But I've never had much luck with it, unfortunately. I'm waiting for some stuff to arrive from Tony as well to give that a try.
Is that the frog fowler?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at some of his stuff the other day actually on WhatsApp.
Yeah, he's. I froze because of bugs messing my isopod colonies. That's a good shout. I just put everything in. Like, I'm really relaxed when it comes to it. I'll spray stuff down with water when I get it, and then it goes into the vivs. But I don't tend to do too much with it.
The main consideration, it's not so much the hitchhikers, it's whether is that area being sprayed with pesticides. That's the big one. If it's something that's fairly wild and it doesn't look managed, then you're probably safe. Yeah. I would stay away from anywhere where there's been any sort of lawnmowers and stuff around, anywhere where it looks like councils have been around, because they have got habits of just spraying everything in sight.
Yeah, so it's
anywhere like that looks managed in the slightest, I just completely stay away from it. Anywhere else, I'd say is
I don't want to say nature reserve or anything like that, but it's definitely not a managed site, if you would. Yeah. I think the most amount of management they do is cut down dead trees because it's public access. That's as much as it go woodlands. Yeah, 100%. You know, we are quite lucky where I am that we've got that access around us, which is really cool. What does a normal day look like when it comes to animal care for an invert keeper? Is there much daily
It's feeding and
activities.
watering. It's feeding and watering. So it's really split up into weekly. So you'll find a lot of guys that keep inverts. It's no something that you're doing every day. It's not like a cat or a dog where you've got to have meals prepared and you're checking water bowls and that. I generally check my animals twice a week. So on Wednesdays and Sundays are normally when I feed animals. And it takes me the full day each day to kind of check them. Well, on the Wednesday, it takes half a day because I'm doing it when I come in for work. But Sunday or Saturday, it's a full day to feed and water all the animals, and it's the same on a Wednesday. And I've generally got it split up where the stuff on the left side because there's slightly less over here, gets sorted on the Wednesday. Stuff over here gets sorted on the Saturday and the Sunday. And it's just as simple as I look at the animals, I drop something in. If it takes it, brilliant. If it doesn't, I'll come back in a couple of hours and take it out if it's still there. And then I check water bowls twice a week. So on both days, I'll try and look in all the enclosures to make sure water is there. Inverts are so easy to keep. It's partly the downfall of the invert hobby, is that it's so easy for inverts to survive that you can keep them in very bad situations and they will still live. But that's also a good side of the hobby in terms that these animals are generally quite hardy. So that doesn't mean we want to skip care, but it means they can be quite forgiving to mistakes, which is nice for beginners because mistakes will happen throughout your journey. I've lost quite a few animals to quite silly mistakes, just forgetting to top up a water bowl at a time and stuff. And it is sad, but it does happen. But yeah, I think it's another strength of inverts. They're so hardy. It can be quite hard to kill them off. So really good first pets.
Yeah, I've lost a couple of scorpions to leaving preying with them that they've gone in, especially crickets. They're brutal.
Yeah, crickets are. I don't really use crickets anymore. I hate catching them for a start, but I did also, one of my nice huntsmen, I did lose to a cricket that I didn't even know was still in the enclosure. I thought I genuinely checked to make sure they are eaten, and I just couldn't find it, so I assumed it was eaten. And then I found the cricket munching on a freshly molted huntsman, which is a real shame.
Yeah. It's normally with the reptiles, it's not too bad. They're not going to do much damage to the reptiles. But definitely the inverts. It was a lesson because there were only slings as well, scorpions. But yeah, we lost 2 to that. So it was something that I've been a little bit more mindful of, and I think it was just coming from the reptiles into the inverts, where you kind of got that broad spectrum of care, haven't you? But then it's things like not leaving the prey in with them. So that's my banana roaches. I don't know what happened to your banana roaches, Gary. I really don't, mate.
Recently.
I really don't know what's happened to them.
Gary's what happened to them.
Gary's what happened to them. Yeah, yeah. And going to feeders, have you got anything that requires any specific feeding routines or prey items, or is it all dubias and red runs?
So it's all fairly generalist. I'm using. There's nothing that is particularly specific. I always vary the feeder. So every now and then I'll go. For example, I've got a couple of tubs of locusts now because I just wanted to vary up the feed of some of the animals. But generally, a lot of these animals, you could feed them on just red runners, and those contain everything that they need to thrive. A lot of these species, variety is good, but a single species diet has never been proven in most of these animals that I keep to be any better than a multi-species diet. So as long as it's got, as long as there's enough calcium going in for them to molt, there's enough of the other nutrients going in, then they're generally going to be okay. They're not very picky.
Yeah. So when you're managing either your feeder breeders or your collection, like, do you have any escape-proof prevention things in place? Asking for a friend.
I used to. So I used to use a talcum and alcohol mixture and rub it around the top of the lid, like what you see a lot of ant keepers do.
Yeah.
I didn't really bother anymore. So
No.
I've got the cat that catches all the ones that escape. And now that I'm using red runners, they can't climb nice smooth surfaces. So as long as stuff is away from the edge, they're not going to get out anyway. So I didn't bother. I keep them in tubs. If I find them in the room, I chuck them into one of the enclosures. The animal gets an extra treat.
Yeah, we've got
it's a nice simple hobby.
We've got the turtle tank downstairs, so anything that I find running around just gets launched into the turtle tank, and either the fish or the turtle make short work of it. Normally the fish draw the turtle to something, and the turtle's like, "Yeah, I'll have that, thanks." So and then the banana roaches have actually put a mesh over the top of the lid. So, under the lid. So when I take the lid off, that initial fright they can't get out. I've got a mesh on it.
Yeah, because
So that
it's the
was,
flying you got to worry about with them.
yeah, there might be one somewhere
They
today.
move quick.
Yeah,
How
But I mean-
many? How many?
just one.
But then it's not even too bad, because it's generally, if it's going to be something that escapes, it's probably going to be males, and they're not going to be laying eggs around your house.
No.
So you're fine there.
Yeah, I don't even know where Steph found it, but she found it, so she did. Do you want to talk about your content creation and building of Clan of Critters online?
Yep.
So when did you start that?
You know what? I can maybe check when my last video was. It was probably last year around this time. I think it was the Easter holidays last year.
And that's when you
That's when
started?
my last video was. Yeah. So, well, actually, no, I tell a lie. I had a channel that I'm going to start up again this summer, now that I've had some practice in here, where I was doing a lot of bushcraft stuff. So I do a lot of, outdoor stuff. I teach a lot of outdoor education.
Yeah.
I'm really into my bushcraft and my survival and things like that. So in the summer holidays, I'm going to start up some more of those again. So I done that. I started that during COVID. I think I put out maybe 2 or 3 videos that got like 7 views, or I've got like 7 subscribers or something on that. And then I decided to work on this one again after, I'm not even sure why I got into it. In fact, you know what it was? I wanted to make videos for students. So I wanted to make like Nat 5 biology videos, National 5 biology for students going into exams. And this was a way for me to practice for that. And I've never actually got around to making any of those teacher videos that I can give to students. So this is just kind of taking over everything. But I'm sure I've been on YouTube for a year now. Yeah, 1 year ago was my first video that went out.
Fantastic.
An unboxing.
Do you find that there's a certain type of concept that performs better for you?
Oh, unboxings by far.
Yeah.
People like to see animals. So a lot of this started up because I came back from Wales. So I done my undergraduate and my master's degree in Wales. And then when I came up north again, back to Scotland, I decided to start up the collection. Because you can't really keep stuff when you're moving about houses and that. Now that I finally had somewhere kind of semi-permanent. This isn't actually our house, yeah, but we are renting. We're here fairly long term. I could actually start to get some cool animals in that I'd always wanted, and things that I generally hadn't been able to afford before. So it was really cool to start up the hobby. So I've been around these animals, working with them for quite a long time through the university and through the zoo and things. So I do have a good period of, say, experience in the background. You know, I've been working with them for over really like a decade and a half at this point. But I've only really been keeping a lot of these animals for, just a year, to be honest.
Yeah. Do you find it difficult filming animals, as in getting them to do what you want them to do?
Yeah, they don't do what you want them to do. A lot of people don't realise if I've got a 10-second clip of an animal in one of my videos, that's probably taken the best part of half an hour to get that shot.
100%.
Like, it's so hard, especially now that I've got a nice macro lens that I just bought. I just got a refurbished one off Amazon, and trying to get the stuff on that in focus, you get them in focus and then they move. It takes so long to get the shortest clip of an animal using these lenses.
It really is, and like I haven't got anywhere specific where I can take photos or anything. But when I'm trying to take photos of hatchlings or anything, it's absolutely brutal. They do not want to do. I've
recorded 5 feeding videos, and I've only ever been able to upload one of them because the animals don't do what you want them to do. I try and feed them, and they decide, nope, they're not having it that day. They run away. They didn't come out. They decide to take the feeder whenever I've kind of pressed pause on the camera because I'm not wanting to eat up my memory and nothing's happening. And it's a nightmare. Feeding videos are a pain.
It will be really interesting to speak to Pet Rock and Roll, Amy. She's got some really good videos. Yeah. So she's coming on in a couple of weeks. So I want to pick her brain on how she manages to catch all these really good shots. Is it just that you've got 30 cameras set up and you get to keep one of them? Because it is super difficult when you're trying to record and work with animals.
I mean, I've got a pretty good camera, but I've only got the one, so it's hard to get all the angles and stuff you need. Anytime, and it goes down to making the videos. Anytime there's a slight cut where I'm talking for like a slightly different scene or something, that means I've had to stop mid-sentence, move the camera, and then try and continue the sentence exactly the same, looking in a different way or sitting in a different position. Yeah, stuff like that. People really didn't understand the effort that goes into these videos.
No, I think, and that's the thing, isn't it? So when we had Green Room Pythons on, and he's got like 5-6 different camera angles, It's
Yeah.
brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But like, I haven't got that. You know, I've got one camera that I use, and it's just I struggle with that.
But I guess when you're doing it as your primary income, you need those to be able to catch shots to create what you need.
Yeah, yeah,
This
there
isn't
is
our
that.
primary income.
No,
So one camera where we
but
were
but it also never started off with his
half-decent.
prime. It also never started off as his primary income. He just was versed and had it all set up nice as well, ready for that as well, didn't he? So it was
Yeah,
it
well,
was
he's a comedian and actor, so he
Bob's done so much stuff. That was crazy, that podcast. I didn't realise the amount of things that Bob's done.
yeah,
Bob
loads,
is
isn't there?
Yeah.
You know, actor, comedian, conspiracy theory nerd,
animal
and
wrangler.
animal wrangler. Yeah, amazing. It really is good. It really is good. Have you found? Have you come across any negativity with the YouTube or the content creation, or has it all been fairly positively received?
It's been mostly positive, which is quite lucky because I really take criticism to heart. I'm not one of these people that brushes it off very easily. Like, I do get caught up on negative remarks. I've always been like that. It's always something that's really affecting me. I'm massively competitive, which I think doesn't help with stuff like this. But there's certain things where people have said where I've kind of came away from that thinking, what do they mean by that? And it was just, it might have just been a general statement in a video. Which I find quite hard to deal with at times. There was somebody that argued with something that I had said in a video about the venom of a particular spider, and I was so annoyed that I deleted the comment, which seems pretty petty, but I didn't want it there. But also, I will say in my defence, they were wildly wrong, and I
Yeah.
had spent hours finding scientific papers to write a response. But I decided I didn't want to get into that headspace. I didn't want to put that on my channel, so I just deleted their comment instead.
Yeah,
Probably
I think
can't argue with some people.
Yeah,
one of the important things as well is that we've got a responsibility to make sure that the information being given is accurate. Now, whether that's we were wrong or the person arguing is wrong. So, if in the simplest thing, especially for your own mental health and headspace and whatever, is just to delete that that incorrect information, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it
and
at all.
I mean, I do know from working with kids, it is very important you pick your battles. There's some arguments that just aren't worth getting into.
Yeah,
It doesn't
like
matter how right you are, how wrong you are. You just ignore it, move on, and everything will go much smoother because of that.
yeah. Does your content creation ever feel like your animal keeping is work?
I think it does at times. I've not uploaded in a couple of weeks now because I've been so busy at work, and it does feel like a massive relief. There is something about coming home on a weekend and thinking, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to get this video out, and it does kind of take the joy out of it a wee bit. Luckily, I do get quite a rush from being able to actually upload that video, so it kind of takes over in the end. So I'm leaving with a good feeling.
Yeah.
But it can be quite hard, especially when you spend a lot of time on a video and then it doesn't perform quite as well as you think. It can put a really negative spin on things. And you can, this will be the same for a lot of people that do keep quite a lot of species, which I'd say invertebrate keepers are more guilty of than a lot of reptile keepers, as we tend to keep a lot of animals and we tend to get into that hobby quite quickly. It can feel like a job at times. It can feel like, oh no, I've got to go home and do this, or that's me just in the door and I have still got 50 tarantulas to feed.
Yeah.
You know, it can be a real task at times.
It 100%. You know, I've felt it a couple of episodes where I think, oh, you know, I've had a really busy week. You know, for whatever that be, whether it's school, because I'm governor and I do a lot with school, where I've had a couple of things going on there, or I've had a lot of stuff going on with the animals. But and it comes to Friday night, and you're like, yes, I can sit down. And you think, oh shit, I've got a podcast to do, and you know, it's that headspace is there, but it's how you deal with it. You know, I'll have a whinge to Andy, and I'm like, fucking, I could do with tonight off, and he's like, come on, look, it's so and so tonight. You've been looking forward to this. Let's get on and get it done. And I think that's one of the things that we've been quite lucky with. That, and you know, we've got Yaz behind the scenes as well now. You know, we've got other people to bounce off, but when it's your own stuff, like my own Instagram, I can't tell you the last time I uploaded onto that. just because
I'm the same.
it becomes a chore. But then when you do things and you get people talking, and you got the community behind you as well, it's amazing. It's a completely different feeling. Are you saying thank God to Yaz, or been able to bounce stuff off as Ryan? I don't know what you're saying. Ryan's just come in.
I'm going to come in from the other side of it, because obviously you're saying this, you find the social media bit can be quite tiring. I find this is the bit that keeps me getting through the week at the moment. I don't mind my job. If any of the guys from work are listening, you're all pricks. But at the end of the day, I've got to a point in my career now where I get bored sometimes. And with this, every week is something new. And it gives me that point to go towards each week. As much as I could be a pain in the ass for everyone around me, doing these each Friday gives me something fresh to think about, something fresh to work with, something that I don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
And that helps me get through my weeks.
I was talking about this kind of one of my videos a few months back, where I was mentioning keeper fatigue, and I was starting to feel it. And it is something that's real. And one of the things I was saying is that sometimes we just need to sit down and remind ourselves that we are good keepers and we are genuinely doing the best for our animals. And also that a lot of these animals wouldn't have this kind of life if they were out in the wild. They'd be well gone by now. One little mistake, missing one day feeding isn't the end of the world. Sometimes you will be tired, and the animals can be quite forgiving. So it's trying not to get too drawn into the negativity of it and just working on it when you can. Because I think when you can come around to that attitude as well, there is something therapeutic about working with animals. It's been proven in clinical studies. Working with animals, it's stronger than many medications for dealing with the symptoms of, say, depression, for example.
Yeah.
So there is something about it. So you can bring yourself away from that headspace. It's amazing.
Yaz has just said she gets it with her animals as well. She's put a hand up. She gets that as well. Lee says, I agree. Just being involved in comments gives me an end of week boost. And there's so much goodness around it as well. But I think you are right. There are parts of it where it does feel like a work, or it does feel, I've got that to do. But again, like you said, the animals are really resilient. And we've spoke about fasting days for animals on quite a few podcasts. We don't have set feeding days for our reptiles. We try to change it up, and we get good feeding responses when we do that. So there are benefits to it as well. Ryan says he gets it with dogs. He works with them every day, and then he's got his own to deal with.
Yeah, I think Louise feels like that as well. So I said Louise is a dog trainer. So I think sometimes she's been out walking dogs all day. The last thing she wants to then do is come home and have to walk a dog. But I think once she gets out with the dog, then it's a different story, But I think it's over becoming that task in the future. It's overcoming the task in the future. You see it there, and it's a hurdle. Whereas once you get into it, it's generally it's not as bad as you think. It's a nice thing to do.
No, it's good.
It's an amazing hobby. Like, I'm not sure where I would be without it, but I definitely think I'm better off for having these animals in my life than having that spare time.
100%.
I agree.
100%. I had some real bad mental health issues a couple of years back, and it was my partner and my old dear Steph and my mum that pulled me out of it. But it was the reptiles that then kept me going forward. That community aspect of it that kept me going forward. And there's a lot of people with that mentality where, I think it was Mike that mentioned it earlier, being able to come home and interact with these animals is just, it's a massive health boost, dopamine boost to help keep his head straight and narrow.
These animals are so cool. Like,
they are.
Just beside me, I have got a spider called Dinner Plate, and it's because he is the size of a dinner plate. How often do you get to see stuff like that? And I can walk into my room on any day and see a massive tarantula that is bigger than my head.
And I'm glad I'm not in your...
Behind me, I've got... Oh, I forgot to leave it open. I was going to see if she comes out. I've been doing a lot of choice-based handling with my snakes, which is actually something I picked up for Bob. So they generally only come out if they want to. And I've got Macaroni Squeeze in here. Oh, there's her head. I've got Macaroni Squeeze in here, who is a boa constrictor. Where are you going to go in Scotland and see a boa constrictor sitting in somebody's room? Like, it's such a cool hobby. It's amazing.
It is.
I know everyone's anti the centipedes, but I love doing the maintenance on my 2 centipedes because as much as they're strange, they're fascinating at the same time.
Yeah, I've got one of my Dehanis here. It's got the warning tape on top because I had it at a children's party just last week. But you can kind of, I don't know if you can see its tail just in the corner here.
Yeah.
But it's,
That's the other
cool
thing that's
animals.
fascinating about
It's
them.
massive. It's the size of my arm. It's a giant centipede. If you bite that, you're going to feel awful for at least 3 or 4 days. So
But then
cool.
you've got, I've recently learned about the semi-aquatic centipedes.
Yeah,
Just wow.
yeah. They've
Yeah.
got really cool adaptations. A lot of these animals breathe through spiracles, which are holes on the side of their body. They don't really have muscles in the same way as we do. But those aquatic centipedes have almost similar muscle fibers to us that they can close off their spiracle so they don't take in any small particulates to clog it up. Like, there's some really cool stuff that's around in the invert world.
Do you know one of the things that absolutely blew my mind, and I only learned this like a couple of weeks back, that earthworms can live in water as long as it's well oxygenated. And I only knew that because I went to feed the turtle some worms, and she was not impressed. Within within minutes, they'd gone. They were in the substrate.
So it's something called cutaneous respiration, or it's more like a pseudocutaneous respiration with them. So
Andy,
which
can you hear
basically
Dan?
means breathing through the skin.
Okay, it's probably my
Can you hear
earpiece.
me?
It's okay.
So it basically means they can breathe through the skin. So if there's an oxygen gradient in the water, which means the percentage of oxygen in the water is higher than the percentage of oxygen in their body, it will passively move into them and they will get that oxygen. But the other thing is, a lot of these animals, they aren't like us. They don't pump blood around the body. A lot of this transport happens passively. We pump oxygen actively, whereas in a lot of these inverts, it's passive. So if they're not doing anything, their body doesn't need to be moving oxygen. It doesn't need to be transporting lymph. So these animals can live without any oxygen for a long, long time.
I'm back. Let me just get
It's
rid of that.
incredible some of the adaptations that these animals have. It's why there's some work coming out showing that a lot of people use. So there's something that happens in a lot of invert stuff. We use kill chambers and things for certain animals that are maybe defective or have had bad molts, or we need to put it to sleep for any reason. Carbon dioxide chambers were quite popular until recently, and it's something a lot of people make themselves using like bicarb and vinegar, and it produces a lot of carbon dioxide, which would then put the animal to sleep. A lot of information coming out now that's showing it's nowhere near as effective as we thought it was, simply because they slow down those respiration processes. So they essentially stop the movement of these molecules around their body, and when you pull them out, they're actually just as alive as they were before. So we're moving away from that. So these animals, they can go through, so they can live in some crazy environments. A cockroach, cockroaches are famous for you being able to chop their head off and they'll still live for a while. And that's because they have separate ganglia that are all along their body. You know, there's ganglia that control different parts of the body. So without a head, they can do most of the jobs that a cockroach needs to do, including breeding. So a headless cockroach can still reproduce, and it can live for multiple days like that.
I think it's 9 days or something crazy, isn't it? It's until the
Probably
nutrition
even
runs out.
Yeah, I was going to say probably even longer if it's just had a recent feed
The
and it's not as active.
I always remember using the line: the two things that will last a nuclear fallout is cockroaches and Java updates.
Yeah.
So it's
They're amazing animals.
Going back to the carbon dioxide, the CO2 chamber stuff, it's how they put a lot of the inverts to sleep, to sex them as well now.
Yeah, so you can use it to knock them out. I tend to use something called ethyl acetate whenever I'm doing stuff like that. So ethyl acetate is quite widely used in entomology as a hobby. So this is good for just knocking them out. If you put them in it for a couple of seconds, it will knock them out. Keep them in for a bit longer. We use what's called kill jars, which are generally jars that have some plaster of Paris in the bottom. You soak this in it, so you pour it in, let it soak, and then put the animal in. This is more effective for actually putting the animal to sleep than like carbon dioxide chambers. So the three methods that are generally used are carbon dioxide, freezing, and ethyl acetate. But this is the only one that's I would say is really like a substantial way to do it at the moment, the one that has kind of the best efficacy in it.
It's just the bit that freaks me out is knowing how long to put an animal in for to knock it to sleep and not kill it. You're
generally
such a fine line on that, isn't there?
well, that's what this new research is showing. Not necessarily. We used to think it was quite a fine line, but now it's shown that it needs much more than we thought it did. So, animals we are thinking are being put to sleep, they've actually just been essentially paralyzed for a longer period. And then they're getting, thrown in the bin or whatever, where they're actually still alive.
I can
Which brings
contest.
up major animal welfare concerns.
I can contest to that. I have experienced that firsthand. I won't go into details online because it's just not the kind of information I want to put out there. But I spoke about it within groups, and I've definitely seen that they need longer than we think.
It'll be the same. It'll be the same way. Reptiles, in a sense, anything that takes a lot of its energy from the environment rather than from internal means, like through basically warm-blooded animals, in a sense, they're going to take longer to be exposed to these things for it to actually take effect. In humans, it'd be fairly quick, and most mammals and reptiles and stuff, it'll take a little bit longer, and vertebrates takes a very long time.
It's all down to the genetic makeup and the metabolisms, though, isn't it, at the end of the day?
So in a sense, there will be broad takeaways you can take across groups, because, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, everything is really more related than it isn't. We all come from a single point. So there is certain things that are hung over. So and then within species, they're very similar. So although we tend to think in individual terms, animals within species are actually very, very similar.
Everyone needs oxygen, yeah, but
yeah,
how much I need oxygen will change a lot differently to how much a certain invert will need oxygen.
Yeah, but that's quite a big group difference as well. But yeah, it will be massively different. And it's the way we use the oxygen. We are actively transporting oxygen through our body. We're using a respiratory system that requires energy in order to function.
No, that makes sense.
Which is actually
it's
quite high level biology. It's not something that if you don't make it into at least National 5 biology, you're never going to learn the active and passive transport systems, which most people don't go to in school at the moment. So that's like the Scottish qualifications. So it's not something people are going to really come across, but it can be fairly important when you're keeping animals.
Yeah, Lou's just said frogs can do some mental stuff. Yeah, I bermated my first reptile last winter, and I was amazed to see this tiny European green lizard be put into a box of dirt and not to be seen for 5 months, and they lived in a shed. And the same with the frogs. We will be wintering our first frogs this year as well, and at the minute they're tiny little froglets, and I'm like, I really hope that they've got some size to them so we can winter them.
Yeah. So we've got Crumpet, who's our hognose, and the plan is we will get her a boyfriend at some point, and he'll probably just go out in the garage for winter at some point.
Yeah,
and then try and get some breeding.
It absolutely amazed me. Yaz is the big frog geek that's around. We counted her species up either yesterday or today. I think she's got 12 different species of frogs, but she's got 13 different enclosures of frogs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's got some incredible species. A lot of rescues as well, and some of them are even stowaways. So I think she's got a colony of a same species that is predominantly all stowaways as well, which is really cool to see. And a lot of them. There you go.
Some more frogs.
She's there. She's still with us. But yeah, toads as well. Yeah, so frogs, toads, same thing to anyone that's not an amphib keeper. So yeah,
I mean, toads are frogs. So
there we go. See, I'll take that. How do you feel that the exotic animal communities took to the rise of inverts? Do you think that the overall hobbies took them quite well, or do you think that they're still that sort of outcuff?
I think there's definitely a lot of overlap happening at the moment. I think anybody who keeps an invert is probably more likely than not to keep a reptile in this day and age. Like people that have tarantulas also have a reptile. It's not always the case. You do get people that strictly stick to inverts, but I think there is a lot of overlap. So you do see those communities mesh, and they're almost essentially the same thing at this point.
Yeah.
There may be not people. I don't think you get as many people who are as one species orientated or one group orientated as they used to be. You used to get people that only kept royals, and that was all they would have. They would have just royals in their house. Whereas now you didn't see that as much. Variety is everywhere really in this hobby.
Yeah. Are you seeing any trends within the invert communities at the moment?
I'm definitely seeing a lot more people going bioactive. So I think that's something that's really becoming popular within the hobby. A lot more people are going with planted setups and things, and they're really trying to match natural environments. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But that's a really good trend that I'm starting to see, and I really love the kind of something that's coming into the hobby a lot more now, which is this idea of scientific animal keeping, where people really are delving into the, I don't want to say the academic side, but like the more science-based approaches rather than just anecdotal stuff.
Yeah.
I think is really cool as well. And there's some really good YouTube channels looking at these things.
Yeah, yes, it's just said it's her Asian common toads that are her stowaways. I'm not even going to try and say that Latin, that binomial
cool.
name. But yeah, so she's got a full community of these that are all stowaways, which is it's quite a story in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. We get quite a few animals in at Edinburgh Zoo, and one of the ones we had that has just went out. They've just went out to another zoo for breeding. Actually, we had some pancake tortoises that were just found in somebody's luggage in Heathrow. They ended up in the zoo. Somebody had just tried to smuggle in these critically endangered tortoises into the country.
Yeah, so I was at a facility a while back, and they had some pancake tortoises in, which was cool. I think Jordan's got them as well, hasn't he, Andy?
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, they're a really cool species to see. But yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Just
That's something that's a serious problem in the invert hobby now, which I don't think you're seeing quite as much in the reptile hobby, and it's the idea of brown boxing. So people illegitimately or sending over animals without it being authorized or registered anywhere. So sending them through means that they're not supposed to be sent. We see that happening a lot with inverts. You will find that most tarantulas you buy on the market, even in the UK where it's strictly legislated, a lot of them are imported illegally. And it's just simply that there isn't enough checks at the border for it to ever be brought up, so it never becomes an issue.
Yes.
Up until recently, most tarantulas were probably illegal imports into the UK that you could buy at like very legitimate pet stores.
I think there was
never declared at any point.
On this one.
There was quite
high profile ones in the last 10 years. I'm not going to say any names on who people are or anything because that's not what we're about. But it's amazing that numbers that they got caught with as well.
Yeah, it's a massive problem, and this is one of those things that we really do need to tackle, especially in the invert hobby, because that's the type of problem that could be the difference between the stuff that the issues that are being pushed ahead going ahead, or them failing. So this is where keeping these animals responsibly is a massive deal. It is good to know where your animals came from. Ask your vendors, and if they're sketchy about it, I would say just walk away.
We had that.
Plenty of breeders out there.
We had Adam on, didn't we, early on, and he's chosen the mindset of he will not sell a wild caught animal, and I think that's really to have that stance early on as well. I think Peregrine have gone to that stance as well, where they will not sell wild caught animals.
Yep, it's something I'm more and more coming to agree with. I'd be a hypocrite if I was to pretend that I don't have wild caught animals. I know some of my animals are wild caught. My two curly hair tarantulas, which I've got a wee egg sac sitting up here from, those are curly hairs. So I wanted to make sure I had true form spiders, so I did buy specifically wild caught tarantulas for that because there's a lot of hybrids in this hobby.
Yeah.
But also my time in science, I was going out into these wild places and catching these animals and bringing them back, euthanized, but I was still bringing them back into the country. So I've got to be kind of at peace with wild caught and wild collections in some way. But I don't
there's
a good thing for the hobby.
There's an importance to it, and there's a need, isn't there?
Yeah.
So that
you have wild caught. I mean, I've got some wild caught animals. I've got wild caught inverts. I've got some wild caught reptiles.
I would say as well, in the defence of some wild caught truly isn't an issue. There are some species that harvesting them in the wild, it is not a problem. So you can effectively harvest them. It will never damage wild populations for many species, unless there's it's the ones where you're talking about. There's very specific localities and stuff where it's an issue, or where there's mass harvesting. For an example, some of the millipedes that we get in the hobby, a lot of them are wild caught, and because the areas that some of these animals live are so vast and unexplored, no matter where you harvest them from, it's probably never going to affect wild populations at the moment. At least not the way the hobby is in the moment. But then there is other animals where if you buy them wild caught, you could be wiping out a species in a locality. So there's kind of two sides to it. I do tend to stay on the side of wild caught is more than overall, I'd say wild caught is bad for the hobby just because of the nuance. I think it's better to stay on the side of caution rather than the other side of that fence.
See, I stand on it's a necessary evil, but who the wild caught goes to is the thing that needs to be looked at more. So if you've got someone who's got a long line of, I don't know, breeding hog noses, just because I'm looking at a hog nose right now, and that we've got morphs, we've got so many different, but you need a fresh bloodline, for example. Say you go for Easterns rather than Westerns, or I've got tricolours and I need a new bloodline. I'd have no problem with having a wild caught to produce into my bloodlines,
Yep.
but is there a need for them to be sold as a pet to people? No.
Yeah. I mean, one thing,
That's where it's finding that line.
in the invert hobby, it's actually, inbreeding isn't really much of an issue because broods are so big that deleterious alleles, things that will, like genes that will kill off the animal, build up so quickly that it generally happens at birth. So there's really cool things that happen in genetics. Essentially, something can become so inbred that it's actually extremely healthy. So we see this happen with a lot of wasps. We see it happen with ladybirds and things. So really, keeping within the hobby in the UK in terms of breeding spiders, it's not a bad thing. We could happily breed from, just a handful of spiders in the UK and have a very healthy population of pets. And it's one thing that we should be trying to strive for is kind of this almost self-sustainable collection and population within the UK if we can, because we've got enough spiders here at the moment. We don't necessarily need many more varieties. We should really be encouraging keepers to breed if they can, and that'll be what keeps the hobby going.
But something that was said, I think it was Ray's podcast, when the maturity speed of the male to female in spiders prevents a lot of the time the same egg sacs or clutches, or whatever you want to call them, from interbreeding with each other.
Yeah, so that works when you've got a lot of emigration happening within populations. So you've got animals moving out to breed, because then those deleterious alleles can kind of really catch up. And if you have a couple of bad generations, that can be quite bad for a population. Whereas in the hobby, we can just breed the same spiders again. We can keep breeding them and crossing them until those animals die off. The handful that do survive then only pass on good genes, and that population will level out. So it'll go through an extreme bottleneck, and then it'll open out. And the animals will be very closely related. They will be very inbred, but they'll also be very healthy. There's a species of wasp, a parasitoid wasp, which is a wasp that essentially lays its egg in a living host. And the difference between a parasite and a parasitoid is that a parasitoid generally kills its host in the end. And these wasps hatch from very small caterpillars and go out into the world, but they're so small that once they leave the host, they will never encounter another of the same species. So they breed with their brothers and sisters as soon as they emerge from the caterpillar. Because they've been doing it for such a long time, they are all almost the same animal. They're very similar to clones, and they're very healthy because of that. Because there isn't any, the only way you're going to get bad genes introduced to that population is if a mutation occurs.
Louise has just said
things that happen in genetics.
Yeah, Louise has just said there that there's a species of wasps that are so inbred there's no deleterious alleles.
And there's some of those in the UK as well. So,
one of the things that Ray raised when we had Ray on from the British Tarantula Society was that he said that he did notice that some specimens were becoming smaller with the constant breeding in captivity. Is that something that can then become an issue, and that's where maybe an outcross to a wild caught would be?
Probably when you say so, because although things are getting smaller, it depends whether there's any negative alleles associated with that. So there is something called like polyphenic plasticity that comes into play. So it's quite a complicated term, but it's essentially the idea that many genes can influence one characteristic, or many genes can influence multiple characteristics. And an animal being smaller isn't necessarily any worse for the animal, and it could just be that those genes are expressed. So every gene you see expressed in an animal, that doesn't mean that that's every gene that's in the animal. So the phenotype is kind of what you see. The genotype are the genes that are present in there. And you could still have the genes for larger animals present, but just because the environmental factors are not expressed. Whereas suddenly you put them to somewhere else, they could get bigger. But there's a trend in domestication across nearly everything we're studying in domestication. Generally, animals get smaller unless we specifically breed them to get bigger.
I guess it's like when you've got people, because no two people are the same size, build, height, and all that. But I could go. I've got my kids, and I've got one that's absolutely fucking tiny, and then another one that's going to tower over probably me.
Yeah. Sexual reproduction, in a sense, is quite random.
It's a
There's
lottery, isn't
two
it?
gene pools getting in, yeah, and you're getting half for each adult in general, and they're getting mixed up.
It's a lottery,
So
isn't it?
it's going to be a mixed bag, yeah.
And I think where people don't understand about the genetics as well, it isn't just a case of you've got X amount of genes, we're going to pick X amount out of this lottery. It's that within those specific genes, that's a lottery itself. So then
We've got more genes that sit in the background of our DNA that do nothing than we have expressed. So you're talking about genes that number in the billions that we never see active and are just in the background of our DNA, almost like little parasites that just sit there and get passed on.
Yeah.
So me and Louise were just at an amazing talk by Richard Dawkins, who is one of the greatest geneticists we've ever seen. It's a shame he's not got a Nobel Prize yet. Who came up with the selfish gene theory. So if you've not read, if you're looking for a scientific book to read, he pioneered scientific literature as a genre that's widely accessible. His book, The Selfish Gene, is incredible, and it talks about a lot of really good specifics, and he conveys these specifics about genetics in a way like nobody else can. He's amazing. It's a really good book to go through. But he talks about these, genes in the back of your DNA that just do nothing, and they're so successful because they do nothing. Because they're never expressed, there's no reason for them to not be passed on, so they just get sent down through generations. Because that's all DNA wants, is it just wants to produce more DNA. It's a little replicator.
I guess these are where the abnormalities and mutations come from over time as well.
Yeah. So mutations are the only way that you can introduce diversity in a population. So if you've only got sexual reproduction and no mutations, there's no new genes entering a population. And we tend not to talk about species because populations are where this occurs. Across species, there can be a lot of things that take into play. So we sometimes talk about species, but when we get into more genetics, we talk about populations. And the only time you get new genes in a population is through mutation. You can't just introduce them any other way. And mutation is entirely random. It's the random part of genetics. The rest of it we talk about as being a random process, but it's quite specific in the way it happens.
this is
Such a rabbit hole that I am far too tired to go down.
Genetics is amazing.
But I want to go down it so much. I want to understand more about genetics.
Donna's
It's one of the most misunderstood topics, and I would say science at the moment. Genetics is so misrepresented, and it is amazing. It is, I think, the idea of evolution is probably the most important scientific concept that has ever been discovered. It's more important than discovering the Big Bang or anything like that. Evolution is probably the single most important scientific concept we've ever came up with as a species.
I think my 12-year-old daughter understands it more than I do.
Are you a football fan, Dan?
I'm not really. I've not even watched the last game. I watched the highlights, but I didn't stay up for it.
I was just making sure because Donna's just says she'll be leaving at 11 for the football. Come on, Scotland.
Yeah, I might try and catch some of it. I'm a rugby guy.
So I was just making sure because I just noticed the time there. She's also just give me earache for making you use big words.
See, this is one of the problems with biology. We have big words, and there's almost no way around these big words because we've never come up with any other words for these topics. It's something we really need to try and do in science is make more accessible ways to communicate these concepts. It's very hard to get these complicated concepts across to people because there is no word that describes what you're trying to describe other than that big word. It's a real shame.
It's dumbing it down.
Yeah,
it's basically dumbing it down.
It's not even dumbing it down. I mean, these are very complex topics, but they're also really common sense. A lot of people can understand them if you can break down the language in some way.
One of the things that I'm struggling with at the moment with some of the royal keepers is changing the terminology that's used. So one of the terminologies that was used, and not just me, this is like there's other people changing this as well. So like your normal genes that you see were always classed as codoms. Well, they're not. They're incomplete dominant.
Even the idea of dominant and recessive is something that we're not seeing so much as well because we talk a lot more about polyphenic variation, which is this idea of multiple genes contributing to a trait. So when you start thinking about it in that, dominant and recessive isn't really a thing. It's more about environmental expression. And yeah, there are some genes that are more likely to be expressed over other genes, but whether that's because it's a dominant and recessive system, we're not too sure. And you talk about when Mendel came up with this, how many hundreds of years ago was that?
One of the things when we test for heterozygous or homozygous. for the Royals. Now, that doesn't matter whether that's an incomplete dominant gene or a recessive gene. They still test for the exact same thing. Is there one copy of that allele or two? So when we're giving someone a result and it's a positive for heterozygous for orange dream, which is an incomplete dominant, then I'm like, well, what does this mean? Because like heterozygous is for recessive traits, and we're like, no, it's the same thing. But one of the things we've been trying to teach people as well is like the gene. So let's take blue-eyed Lucy is the name of the gene, and then your other morphs that come under it, it's still in that gene. It's just the morphs and the mutations are different. And there's just people that just can't accept it. They're like, I've never said it that way, and I'm not going to say it that way. And it's like, well, this is the way it actually is now that we're digging into the science of it, and it's the difference between the academia and the hobby, isn't it? That the hobby then gets stuck in their ways, whereas the academia hopefully are open to moving with the times.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about like the academic side of a lot of this conversation. They're at least 10 years ahead of what's happening kind of in the civil side, so outside of academia. So like the guys that are going to university at the moment will be learning things that I will not really discover until, you know, a decade in the future. But they're learning it right now. So there is this breakdown between what's happening to you know, the everyday person, everyday hobbyist, everyday scientist, compared to what's going on in academia. It's a real shame, which is why we need more open source in science. We need to get more people publishing and putting out papers for free so people can read it, and publishing papers in a way that can be read, instead of just trying to use fancy lingo, using words that actually make sense to people.
Yeah, so Donna's just put something up which just lines up brilliantly to what I've said. So she said her bell is a phantom Russo. So what you've actually got there, Donna, is a homozygous blue-eyed Lucy, and the mutations within it are the phantom and the Russo, and that's what people aren't willing to move with in their times. It's difficult especially when something's been doing this for the last 30 years on a hobby level. Trying to tell people that it's different is difficult. So it is. Well, coming up.
No.
Well, you're right there, Andy.
No, the brain's trying to catch up with everything right now, and it's all stuff that I find so fascinating. But I'm just going to go through again and again and again until something goes.
It's very hard because as well, somebody will talk about something that's, you know, say there's a tier, you know, a lot of this information. They talk about something that's on a high tier. But then when scientists are talking to people who aren't involved in this field, they forget that there's 3 tiers of information you need to already know for this thing to make sense. So they're jumping between top tiers trying to get this topic across. But actually, they need to be starting at bottom tiers and working up to a concept and then moving back down, working up to a concept and moving back down. But then the problem with that is it's a very long conversation. It's not a conversation you can have in a short amount of time. And again, that's where kind of schools come in. We need to be teaching these smaller tiers on a more consistent basis. So when these conversations happen outside, there's a better basis of understanding for it.
In my opinion, with schools, they're so stuck on this is the government curriculum that a lot of this stuff gets overlooked.
Yeah, I hate it. So it's something I've been quite vocal about, which I'm not really supposed to be as a teacher, but I absolutely hate the Scottish curriculum for science. They've taken the worst parts of biology and thrown it into this course. We've got a really cool topic at the end of the curriculum, Unit 3, called Life on Earth, where we actually look at the things that people are interested about. Nobody takes, you know, biology to learn about how enzymes produce proteins or how enzymes print proteins. They take it to learn about animals and plants and living systems, but we spend more time talking about enzyme specificity than we do in the entire Life on Earth topic, which talks about evolution and it talks about habitats and where animals live and lifestyles and food webs and stuff like that. It's a real shame. But it's just because of the people that are writing it. It's old stuffy guys. They're sitting in an office somewhere thinking, oh, this is important, they need to know this. And then you go to university and you've got to learn it all again anyway.
Yeah.
But we don't know anything at school that's worth its weight in gold for when we're adults. I mean, when was the last time I used Pythagorean theory? Or whatever it's called?
That's one I wouldn't agree with, because stuff like that can be really important. Because I say with those tiers, there'll be things that you don't even realise that those lower tier bits of information are coming into play. So because you might understand Pythagoras, so you've learnt it, even just the concept of knowing that in a triangle you've got a longer side here than you do across here. That's important in everyday life, especially when your brain is working at some of these really important calculations. And there was a really interesting paper that was written about maybe 8-9 years ago now that looked at kids that had been taught Pythagoras and kids who hadn't, and looked at how they could take a free kick in football. And kids that had been taught Pythagoras were more effective at taking free kicks in football because they understood angles better. So although these kids didn't realise it, there's actually really cool background information and stuff that's coming into play when your brain's processing it.
I imagine the same will be for like pool and snooker players as well.
Yeah.
You know.
But then the way we teach Pythagoras is rubbish. We don't teach any real aspects of it, so people don't even know they're using it, which is a real shame.
No.
But there is some things which are absolutely pointless. The kids don't need to know.
Yeah. Louise has just said, if you're not a scientist, if you can't change your deeply held beliefs based on the latest evidence, it's a soul-destroying career, really.
And even then, you get scientists who won't. There's many scientists that their entire career is one thing, and they will stick to that no matter how wrong they know it is.
Yeah. And Yaz says Andy's just malfunctioned, and Donna says she wished she'd done biology rather than chemistry. I was having this conversation. One of the parents in school, she had a kid with her. She's just gone through mock exams in secondary school, and I was like, "Listen, you'll regret it later on in life." And I think, you know, as adults, it's easy with hindsight to look back and go, you know, where I am now, I wish I'd have paid a bit more attention to this.
Yeah.
You know, but there's nothing to stop us learning now. You know, the little I do know about the genetic side of it is what I've learned as an adult. It's not what I've learned through being at school. So you still can learn. Old dogs and new tricks.
You know, bairns are never going to listen to adults. We're not cool. The kid bairns think they know better than us. Experience means very little when you're young. You don't see it as the same thing as you do when you're an adult. But I try and get across to the bairns. I've never really done very well in school. I never got very many qualifications. And although it didn't necessarily hinder my career path, it did make it take a lot longer and it cost me a lot more. So, for example, when I decided finally to go into teaching, I had to pay like £600 to get my higher English exam because I never done it in school.
Yeah.
You know, wee things like that. I had to do an extra year to get into university. I had to do a foundation year. So that cost like another £5,000 to then be able to go and spend another £40,000 on my undergraduate degree, and then another £20,000 on my master's because I'd done it all in Wales rather than Scotland.
Well, that was silly.
So the one thing I always try and say to kids, it's not so much about what you're learning, it's about giving yourself choice later. Get as many qualifications as you can, and it doesn't mean that you need to do anything with that, but it'll give you more choices later in life. So every qualification is an extra choice.
100%. And I think the one thing we forget as well is, like, for a lot of us, that this is a hobby and not work. So you'll always get more enjoyment, or you should get more enjoyment out of your hobby and the things you're choosing to do rather than the things you have to do.
But this is where we need to be manipulating kids as well. We need to be engaging them in science and the outside world. So it is their choice. We need to get them interested so then they choose to go on and study these things.
Yeah. And
that's something you can do. You know, it is so easy to manipulate a kid. It is so easy. Show them some cool stuff and they will love it because they're naturally curious.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I'm going to say I'm very cautious of time. We're nearly on 2 hours here, lads. I think we're going to do a round 2.
Yeah. That's because I've had like 3 cans of Monster before I came on. So
it's not. Do you know what? It's when the conversations flow and you get into those conversations with like-minded people and you're genuinely just talking rather than an interview. Like I've been following the. Lou says shut him up. I've been following. I've sent Dan some notes earlier of what we're going to talk about, and literally we've spoke about everything, and it's never in. And I say it every week. It's never in the order that goes in. I think the only things we haven't done is the quick fire questions, but it's definitely been a really good conversation with you, Dan. I'm really happy that you've come on and spoke with us about more than just creepy crawlies as it happens to go. I've got some homework.
Actually spoke about creepy crawlies that much.
Well, I don't think we have. I don't think we have. You know, I've got some homework to do with Ross Piper, so I've got him on the old screen next to me, and I'll go away and have a look at him and listen to some of his stuff.
He also runs some amazing courses in the UK, insect ID courses and that, and he's recently started doing expeditions to the area where I went to Peru, near Los Amigos Biological Station.
Fantastic. There's we're going to have Yaz on in July, the end of July, the beginning of August. She's going to China on an expedition with Francis.
Yeah.
So she's going to come on and share some videos and footage as well, which
Yeah,
is going to be really good. Don't
I was so
don't
jealous
we-
of that when she was talking about it.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good episode. Hopefully we can get Francis on as well, to talk about it as well. So Yaz is going to work a magic when she's over there. We've spoke about bugs too much, but the chat has been organic. Yeah, we haven't spoke about bugs too much, but the chat has been organic. It has, and it's the joys. It's one of the things I think Andy and I pride ourselves on, that it's not an interrogation, it's a conversation, and it's been good.
It makes a hell of a difference.
Lou wants to go to bed. I kind of get that feeling. If they're not watching football, she wants to go to bed. Dan, thank you very much. For people watching,
no, thank you.
where can they find you? Socials.
I mean, I'm on Instagram, so it's Clan of Critters as well, and I am on YouTube, just the same name, Clan of Critters. That's kind of all I'm doing now, and even then, I'm not really on Instagram, to be honest. YouTube's where I put a lot of my stuff.
Yeah.
Every now and then, I visit some of the invert shows and that, and I've done a talk at Scottish one. So you might see me around places like that, and you're welcome to say hi.
Fantastic. Do you get this side of the border often?
No, particularly, because a lot of these events happen during the school year. There's only one that's happening in the holidays, and I think it's, Barnsley? No, Bristol.
Okay.
It's doing in Bristol.
So that's a good
It's
trek
hard
for you.
me to get to them because
That's a
lot
good
of them are on
trek.
Sundays, but a lot of them are on Sundays, and then I'm working the Monday, and I can't.
Yeah.
I can't just take time off during the
Yeah,
year.
I'll say, 'cause I've
Yaz
done
has
work
just
up
said
in
there is.
Livingston.
Yaz has just said August with the IHS. That's the holidays for you guys, isn't it?
Yeah,
Ish.
yeah. Is that?
Ish.
I think it's towards the end of the holiday. No, is it near the start of the
Oh,
holidays?
Yaz is talking about when she's away, not the holidays. She's
No,
just catching up.
there's another-
Yeah,
There's another IHS during
yeah.
school
There's
holidays as well.
there's an
There's one.
IHS in August. Yeah, but she's on about when she's on the podcast because she's away. I've mixed the
Oh,
two
right.
conversations up. Dan, thank you very much. For those that are still here and have managed to stick with us for this episode, go through and follow Dan on his socials. Give him a like, click, and a follow. Whether you're into snakes, spiders, isopods, frogs, millipedes, or anything in between, Clan of Critters is a brilliant reminder that all animals people fear are often the ones most worth learning about, especially when he's talking about expeditions into Peru and everything. So it's absolutely fantastic. Dan, thank you very much again. Andy, any final thoughts or words?
No, don't miss next week though, because we've got Lee Warren.
We have got Lee Warren, and I've got some good news for genetic testing next week as well. So we have, yeah.
Dan's going to be interested in that one.
It's chondro people. It's for chondros. So, but hopefully we're going to talk to Lee
but it's
about
still genetic stuff.
It is. Hopefully we're going to talk to Lee about water systems and quarantines. He's had a real bad time with quarantining plants. Actually, Lou, it might be of interest to you. Lee runs one of the better known reptile shops in the UK, and he had a really bad problem with plants in quarantine, and so he's now took to quarantining all his plants, which is really cool, and a side of the hobby that I don't think the average reptile keeper even thinks of. I know frog keepers are a bit more on top of it, they spend silly money on plants, let alone frogs, don't they? Anyway,
Yeah.
I've gone on again. So I want to say good night. I want to say thank you to Dan. Thank you to the chat. Make sure you do all the good stuff, like, follow, click, all that sort of stuff. And I will see you all when I'm looking at you. Good night.